After long deliberation, the Korea-EU FTA was finally ratified at National Assembly. While the FTA is promising to some, others remain staunchly against it. Let's discuss the benefits of the Korea-EU FTA as well as how we should mitigate its costs. Join us after the newsreel.
The Korean National Assembly finally ratified the Korea-EU FTA on May 4th. The day's session was open solely for the vote on the FTA alone, and none of the other items pending in the Legislative Committee were discussed. Meanwhile, the Korean Rural Economic Institute estimates that agricultural production will decrease by $174 million per year over the next 15 years, resulting in a total loss of $2.8 billion. This and other issues in the Korea-EU FTA have caused problems in its ratification. However, the ruling party was able to win over the opposition under some precondition. Specifically, the compensation guarantee for losses in agricultural product prices was expanded, and the no supermarket zone was extended to a 1 kilometer radius from 500 meters in order to protect traditional markets. Now that the Korea-EU FTA is set to take effect, let's now crunch the numbers to really understand the losses and gains for the Korean economy.
Welcome back. To discuss today's topic, we have two expert guests in the studio. On my right is Professor He Chan-guk, who is professor at the College of Economics and Management of Chungnam National University. Always welcome to our program, Professor He.
Good to be here.
Yes. And on my left is Professor Chung In-kyo, who is a fellow professor of economics in her university. Thank you for being with us today, Professor
Thank you for the invitation.
Okay. Well, eventually, after a long struggle, the Korea-EU FTA was finally rectified. And actually, but I want to know the responses of the parties involved to its rectification. Professor He?
Well, in general, it's very positive, especially Korean businesses. Business associations such as Korea Chamber of Commerce and other groups, made formal greeting announcement about the ratification, and it is going to provide important boost to Korean exporters' drive to increase the total export volume to $1 trillion US dollar within near future. And it's also understandable that for many Korean businesses whose export sales are larger than domestic sales,
of course, yes.
External market, and the key market like the EU market, with 27 nations with 500 million people, is a very positive news.
Well, yes.
I had a chance to talk with Korea's policymakers, especially regarding FTA issues. Actually, they look like very relieved with the ratification of the bill by the National Assembly, unless it was done a couple of days ago. Actually, they should talk with the partners of European Union in order to change the schedule of implementation date.
I see.
So now it's done. So even though it's a little bit delayed, but they welcome the ratification by the National Assembly. Yes.
Well, just before, as Professor He mentioned, the EU is the one of the most important economic partner for Korea, I think. And the Korea-EU FTA is being welcomed as an opportunity for Korea to grow in the EU market. I want to discuss further about how important is the EU market for the Korean economy.
Oh, yeah. The importance of European Union's market as well as the FTA with the EU can be explained with several aspects. First, European Union is an exclusive trading bloc covering most of European countries.
I see.
So non-European countries like a Korean company, they have suffered from discrimination compared with the European Union's companies. So we can, our companies can compete with European companies in equal footing basis. So that's one of important aspects. Second is European Union is Korea's number 2 trading partner as well as number 4, most important investor to Korea. And we are recording trade surplus. So FTA means strengthening current trade patterns. So we are exporting more than import from EU, right? So with FTA, actually we export more. Of course, we import more, but we will have, it looks like to have higher trade surplus volume. So we can expect substantial economic gains from, very simply analyzed from the current trade patterns or structures. The third point I would like to add is European Union's tariff barriers.
I see.
They charge quite high tariff rates on imported goods. Unlike other advanced economies such as Japan and the US, they charge almost 5% on average tariff rates. So that's quite high. In case of Japan, they charge about 2%, US 3%. Also, we are exporting a lot of automobiles and auto parts and home appliances and textiles. So they charge about 8 to 16%, especially for automobile 10%. So if they eliminate those tariffs, we will have a much higher chance to export to EU. Finally, I would add to some strategic importance.
I see.
Our trade, we have many problems in our trade structure, right? So one of the problem is heavy dependence on specific country. In the past, we have a high dependence on the U.S. market.
Yes.
Now we have China. We are focusing too much. Then the country has some problem. In that case, we might have trouble, right? So with the FTA, we can expect some diversification of export market.
I see. Yeah. Well, that's very, very important point, I think. Well, by the way, Professor Her, well, as far as I know, the Korean government, well, from the previous government, we have very actively participated in the regional economic integrations.
Right.
Among them, I think that there are two greatest FTAs. One is the Korea-EU FTA, and the other one is Korea-USA FTA.
Right.
So I want to discuss about whether there are some differences between Korea-EU FTA and the Korea-US FTA, well, with regard to terms of the rectification, terms of the negotiation.
Well, it's there are differences, and the main reason being the difference between the nature of the organization EU and the nation USA. So basically what's going on is if things go right, if European countries could ultimately agree, then maybe 10, 20, 30 years from now, EU is going to be like USA.
United States of
Right.
Europe,
So
right? Yes.
still, but at this stage, there are 27 sovereign countries in EU, so that complicates
I see.
the issue. And also, EU being the collection of European countries, they have very fostering cooperation and coordination among themselves.
I see.
Is very important. So they have very strong intra-regional focus.
I see.
So whereas U.S., it's just one country, so they don't have that. So that's then this procedure, the parties who have to agree and so forth, it's going to get more complicated with the EU compared to USA. Second part is U.S. and the EU have different areas of competitiveness. For example, in terms of commodities, EU is more interested in exporting their pork to Korean market, whereas the U.S. is interested in exporting beef into Korean market. So, and as you know, the these samgyeopsal or the bacon type meat is most popular meat in Korea, and Europe is a big producer of pork, so they would like to see increase in that. Also, EU is interested in areas such as wine or luxury consumer goods, whereas US it's more sort of general different types of grains in the area of agriculture. So these are sort of the some visible differences I can think of.
Well, I would like to ask you a follow-up question. You mentioned very briefly about the contents of negotiations between Korean government and the EU, but could you elaborate more about the major issues of contention for the Korea-EU FTA?
Okay, part of it Professor Chung touched upon earlier. It always, trade negotiation is very detailed and almost tedious because you have to go over item by item, right?
Right.
So, by nature, it's going to be centered on the key items that Korea export a lot, and key items Europe would like to export a lot. And in that category, for Korea, it's automobile, right? So it's a big part. And also, as it stands, as mentioned by Professor Chung, EU's tariff rate is very high, 10%, compared to US of 2.5%.
Right.
So it's a big difference. So even though Korean automobile companies already established local subsidiaries in places like Poland and such to deal with this issue, but it's going to make life easier if the just tariff itself is lowered. So that's, Europe will have somewhat different attitude about it.
Yes,
also from Europe's point of view, Europe sells quite a few cars to Korean drivers, as you might notice. So they have their own issues, such as Korea insisting Korean standard on automobile characteristics, such as emission control and so forth. And EU would like to apply more international, global, or European standard. So European cars passing that standard, should be accepted, in Korean market instead of going through, separate procedure again. And also, from the point of view, from EU's point of view, they think Korea has what's called non-trade barriers, and not only tariffs, but procedures difficult and so forth. So, and these are sort of hard issue to deal with because it's not clear as tariff, right? So it's so that was contentious. So there were a few areas that were contentious.
I see. Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
Compared with Korea-US FTA, the negotiation with the EU run quite smoother.
I see.
There are several reasons for that. First, we could learn about the sensitive issues with FTA with the US. So, we can manage those issues with the EU. Second, basically, European Union countries, focus on trade sector, goods sectors in FTA negotiation. So, we had both the sensitive sector regarding investment regulations.
I see.
But the European Union, actually, they didn't raise the issue.
No.
And the third one was when we look at the trade structure between Korea and the EU, we have a very complementary structure so compared with the US. So we overall the negotiation was quite smooth.
Well, I would like to ask one more question to Professor Chung. Well, it took a long time to rectify the Korea-EU FTA in Korea. Why? Why did it take us such a long time?
We are spending about 5 years for the ratification of Korea-EU FTA.
Yes.
we could get a ratification for the EU-Korea FTA, in 3 years. So I think it's a quite. Of course, if we could earlier, it will be much better. There are we can first. I'm gonna underline the issue of the sensitivity of trade policy.
I see.
Basically, trade policy contains a market openness. So in overall, the whole economy collect a lot of economic gains. But trade policy produce some losing sectors.
I see.
So policymakers, politicians comes in regarding the losing sectors. So they are supposed to raise opposition to the policy. So
by the way,
that's one of the important
reasons, yes.
Political economic issues.
I
right?
see. Yes, but I'd like to ask that question. That part another question. The oppositions. Well, there are some group of people who were against the Korea-EU FTA. As you mentioned before, they insisted that without appropriate the measures to compensate some loss, potential loss in a very sensitive area, the Korea-EU FTA should not be rectified. Do you think that those kind of issues has been adequately addressed so far?
Can I touch the first issue?
Yeah,
then
please,
I come back
please,
to
yes.
the later one, right?
Yes.
So opposition parties, they oppose to the ratification of EU-Korea FTA. I think they regard the ratification of Korea-EU FTA could be regarded as a rehearsal for the ratification of Korea-US FTA.
Yes.
So, US and EU are most giant, largest economy in the world. So, if the National Assembly ratify FTA with EU, then actually they will not. It is quite difficult to say no to the FTA with the US, right?
Yes.
So, basically, they object to Korea-US FTA. So in related with those issues, they object to the FTA with the EU.
Okay.
Second, the question you raised was the compensation package was reasonable compared with the so-called damaged, FTA damaged, right?
Yes.
So the government prepared 11 trillion Korean won
11 trillion.
package for losing sectors related with the implementation of Korea-EU FTA.
I see.
Actually, it's a huge amount. The Ministry of Agriculture, as well as the Agriculture, Korea's Institute of Rural Economic Institute, they estimated some damages. I think we will have some loss for those sectors. But what I do not agree is, we are importing pork, chickens, especially from Denmark, Netherlands, France. European countries actually they obey to so-called animal welfare.
Yeah, right.
Actually, they spend a lot of money to raise those animals compared with Korea. They feed imported feed meals to those animals. Then the price is much higher than Korea.
Right.
Wage rate more than double, triple, right? Then they say, Korean farmers say, okay, we can compete with the European Union, the meat from those countries. Actually, the price is more than double. Does it make sense? So this time, if politicians think about the national interest and some reform of agriculture sector, they should think the real problems.
I see.
So 11 trillion won, I think it's more than enough, I think.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I think 11 trillion won is really huge amount of money. Yes. By the way, actually, we discussed about the economic benefits which you can get from the Korea-EU FTA. Maybe you can add something more about it?
Well, it's talking of numbers. The estimates of the benefit to Korean economy of the FTA runs around 20 trillion won over about 10 years. So, all in all, the rough estimates seem to tell that benefit, altogether benefit, is going to be larger than cost.
I see.
And that's sort of general perception.
Certainly, we will get the huge benefits from the Korea FTA.
Right.
I think that was good. Well, let me ask a question to Professor Chung. Well, the Korea FTA has been rectified, but I think that's the end of story. What I mean is that there are still remaining procedures. What are they? What are the remaining procedures too?
Yes. Now we should change 11 bills in order to implement the bill which was ratified recently. For example, customs bill, customs law, they should change in order to reflect preferential treatment for imported from European Union.
I see.
So we actually do not have enough time. So within 1.5 months, we should change the bill. So the National Assembly will open the regular session in June.
I see.
So we should change the bill. So then basically there are in the agreement in the Korea-EU FTA, it states that the agreement will be implemented when both parties report all the measures which are necessary for the implementation FTA. So after they ratify the report to both parties, then after 2 months later, it's supposed to be implemented or both parties agreed upon.
I see.
So as far as we know, both parties agreed to implement July 1st this year, right?
I see.
So we should, in order to do that, we should change the 11 bills.
I see. Well, time is very limited, so I would like to ask this question to both of you. Maybe this will be the final question to you. Well, as Professor Chung mentioned, we have only 1.5 months until the effectuation of the Korea-EU FTA. So, what kind of measures the Korean government should take with regard to Korea-EU FTA?
I'm sure they're going to get really busy. But in terms of sort of maximizing the benefit of this FTA, I think it's important for government to basically let the details of this known to small and medium companies, because large businesses have capability to deal with the changes and so forth. But small and medium companies tend to not have enough information or expertise to deal with the changes. So that's one area that government could put extra effort to increase the benefit.
Okay, thank you very much. I will give you 10 seconds to Professor Chung.
Yes. In the same line with the statement of Professor He, the government should spend a lot of time in order to provide information for utilizing the FTA. Small and medium companies actually no idea.
I see.
Actually, I think many companies lost their interest regarding utilizing FTAs. Now we revital them.
I see. Professor He and Professor Chung, actually, thank you for being with us. And then we had a very productive discussion today. Thank you very much. And this has been Shin Sang-hyo for In Focus. Bye.